Welcome to episode 478 of the DFO Rundown. As always, brought to you by Bet365. And man, you're into the elimination rounds. USA's in, Canada's in at the World Cup. So check out all the action at Bet365. Also for the NHL Draft on Friday. Who do you like? You got any surprise picks? You can go pick by pick if you think you know what you're doing. Check it out at Bet365. I'm Jason Gregor, alongside Stanley Cup winner Mike Rupp, as we record on Thursday, the eve of the 2026 NHL Draft. And oh my goodness, this week has seen bigger trades than we ever see at the trade deadline, Rupp. Or like lots of legit players have been moved. If we just recap, here's the names of players moved this week. You know, so some as far as big name guys go, you got Brady Tkachuk moved. You got Eklund moved. You got Nemec moved. Byram, Alex Tuch traded for his rights. Jordan Kyrou has been dealt. Like it is, and lots of first round picks going back in returns to these play. Kesselring, of course, also moved. Like it's been a wild week of trades.
It has been. It almost feels like. There's times where I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, I haven't checked my phone in a while. Like it's gotten to that point. It almost feels like July 1st, where you're sitting there, you're like, oh, something's had to have gone down, and it's just kind of funny because you're in theory, you're like, why? You know, it's just a crazy time right now where we kind of saw this coming. I think with the way that the UFA market was shaken out over the last 18 months, where guys were signed crazy, and we're not even at the draft, right? Like so, once this draft weekend starts, I wonder if there's going to be a whole slew of more trades to come.
Yeah, I forgot even like Darren Radish got traded earlier in the week. That's another name I forgot going to Toronto. He signs the 8-year deal. Siplikov was part of that trade to go to Calgary. Greenway, part of the trade. You just had the Drury trade yesterday going to the Predators. So it's been wild. So there's a few teams that have been making the biggest splashes, either sending guys out or signing contracts. But let's start with the Buffalo Sabres. So they ship out Bowen Byram to Chicago. They get the 4th overall pick and Louis Crevier and another prospect. Greenway goes with him. So there's 2 guys out. Then they trade Alex Tuch to Washington for a 3rd round pick, basically just trading his rights. So you've traded out 3 players with significant amounts of money that have been traded away. Bowen Byram was owed $6 million. Greenway was owed $4 million. Tuch signed for $10.5 million. Then they turned around and used some of that cap space, and they signed Zach Benson to a $7.5 million deal. So pretty good contract for the youngster. But what do you make of these moves for the Sabres as far as the Byram one? Obviously, I guess they just didn't want to pay him. He's got a contract up at the end of this coming season. What do you make of that deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for them because Byram wanted to get number 1 pair reps. He wanted to be the number one on a team, and he hasn't had that opportunity in his career yet because he's played on some pretty good defensive-laden hockey clubs, right? With Colorado and then Buffalo, which you're playing behind like Erasmus Dahlin. And so I think that was a big driving force here, is that he wasn't going to commit long-term to Buffalo. So kind of forced their hand in some regards. I don't think even at the dollars that he would make, I think Buffalo would still like to keep that decor together, but they were kind of in a tough spot. So, yeah, I mean, Buffalo is an interesting one because I don't know what you make of this past year. I don't think it was a fluke what they did as far as just being a legit team in the East. But I am a little hesitant even before all this action where I'm like, can I see a world where they don't make the playoffs next year? Yeah, I can. And that's not a knock against them. I just think that's the ebbs and flows of the NHL now. Like there's no guarantees of anything. And you talk about divisions, and some teams that maybe had an off year this past year were expecting to be better this year in the Atlantic. I'll be interested to see what they do here moving forward, but they're not a better team right now. Like they've taken a couple hits here in the last few days as far as losing quite a bit of talent. So you're losing a high-end guy in your back end that I just mentioned. That was one of their biggest bread and butters with turning their franchise around was their D was playing up to their potential. Alex Tuch, We knew he was going to be making a lot of money and maybe not signing there, but that's a big hole offensively. And you got some depth pieces as well. So I'm kind of waiting to see what's going to happen here moving forward. But as of today, I don't think there's any guarantee this team's going to make the playoffs.
Well, yeah, Jarmo Kekalainen. I'll say this: the Crevier acquisition for Byram, I like him. He's huge, right? Like gives him a little bit more size on that team. I think he's got lots of potential to grow. Shoots absolute cannons, right? 6 times over 100 miles an hour. The only guy in the NHL to do that this past season. So I do like getting him, but I agree with you on Bowen Byram. Like Bowen Byram's going to go to Chicago. I saw people in Chicago and around the league saying, "Oh my God, the Blackhawks got fleeced in this deal." Well, first of all, the Greenway contract's kind of irrelevant for them. They don't care that they pay him $4 million. They're not close to the cap hit. He's got 1 year left in his deal. The major part of this trade, and I think they get Greenway as a veteran guy in their bottom 6. How many games is he going to play due to health? That's the bigger question. But they desperately needed someone who could move the puck, who can skate. Bowen Byram has got a lot of confidence. Bowen Byram, and I know people are like, yeah, but you're trading the number 4 pick. I'm like, he was a number 4 pick. And Bowen Byram, the year he was drafted, was an absolute stud. If you would go back and look at Bowen Byram drafted and then look at the defenseman here, is Chase Reed infinitely better than Bowen Byram? No. They're kind of the same guy. Bowen Byram was a 17-year-old player who basically was the leading guy on a Vancouver team that went to Game 7 of the WHL final. And they lost in Game 7 to a pretty loaded Prince Albert team with lots of older players. Vancouver didn't have, I think, the same. And Bowen Byram was unreal in that series. I remember watching that and being like, oh my God. Like I watched lots of those games live because my nephew was playing in Prince Albert. And I asked him about Byron. And he's like, I'm looking him up. This kid's 17. What? Like he just had swagger and confidence.
Yeah.
And he's 6'1", but he's heavy. He's not overly tall, but he's heavy. He's going to go to Chicago Rupper. He was 21st in the NHL in even strength scoring for defensemen last year. And he didn't play with their top line a ton in Buffalo. He's going to play a lot with Connor Bedard. I'm telling you, I won't be shocked at all if we see Bowen Byram as 60-point plus defenseman next season. Because if you look at his 42 overall points, he doesn't get a ton of power play points, right? Because he's not on the power play. And I get why, because you had Rasmus Dahlin and you had Cale Makar, established guys older than him. Guess what? They're going to be ahead of you. That's fine. But I like the deal for Chicago. Do I think Crevier is a lot? And the 4th? It is. But Chicago, I don't know the benefit of them adding a number 4. A, is a number 4 going to be guaranteed better than Bowen Byram? I don't think so. And B, look, you can't just always have young guys, Rupper. No one wins with all 21 and 22-year-olds. It doesn't happen.
They need to take a step. We can say what we want. They've picked very high because they've been very low in the standings, and we can say what we want to say about this past season because they were quite the story till December. But if we're being honest, once that second half of the season got going, they look like the regular Chicago Blackhawks we've seen. So I don't really believe Connor Bedard's game has gotten better. He's found, remember, after year 2, kind of a little bit of a disappointing season. Like he's gotten better. So that's a positive. But their team hasn't really taken steps, in my opinion. Like they weren't playing meaningful hockey down the stretch for they weren't. They just the bottom fell out. So I think at the end of the day, as high as the pick number 4 is, and maybe the potential of getting someone that would even be more impactful than a Bowen Byram, which is no guarantee, like you just mentioned. The fact of the matter is that Byram is an NHL defenseman that they are targeting as being someone who has not reached their potential yet. So they're hoping on that because of getting him on the ice with Connor Bedard, like you mentioned. But it's also a player that can impact today. I mean, you look at this draft. I mean, listen, I'm not going to come across as being any kind of draft expert because I am not. But everything that I've seen doesn't say that there's these impactful players that are going to come in even at 4. I know a lot of people want, hey, who's going to be Connor Bedard's running mate? Don't you need a winger for Connor Bedard? I'm not sure you're going to get that at 4 in this. The top 2 is McKenna and Stenberg. You're not going to get them at 4. So, what are we doing? So you need someone to move the needle now. They've got to take a step now. And here's the big thing is you can get Byram you get Byram under contract, and he's going to get that opportunity to get everything he wanted, and you can lock up this guy for a long time. So, it's funny because I first came in, I was like, oh, that's a hefty price on your show yesterday. And then I thought you stated the case pretty well and debated that it was a good move. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, I like it. It's a risk-taking move, but there is some absolute in it. And absolute is Bowen Byram's a hell of a defenseman, and you're adding him into the mix right now. So this is one that I agree. I think we're going to see a different Bowen Byram in Chicago.
Now, moving picks, I was a little surprised on the Sharks trade. So Eklund was a 7th overall pick in 2021. And he has now scored the last 2 years 50-plus points, which is a legit top 6 player in today's NHL. No debates, 58, 53 points. He's not a big goal scorer, right? He's more of a playmaker. He wasn't a guy who was padding his stats playing with Celebrini, if anybody's wondering. He wasn't on his line, right? A little bit on the power play, sure. But I don't view as scoring on the power play as padding points. Just because you're good at scoring on the power play. Last time I checked, power play goals count the exact same on the scoreboard as even strength goals or 5-on-5. It doesn't really matter. But they trade away him for the 9th pick, Rupper. And I look at and it's kind of the opposite of Chicago. I'm looking at San Jose and I'm saying, well, and they gave up, Eklund and Haltonen and Svoboda. Now, who knows how good those other prospects are going to be? We'll see. And it's the number 9 pick. So, and people are like, yeah, but this means they can take Stenberg at number 2. And I'm like, well, why couldn't they take Stenberg at number 2 anyway? Right. And so they're like, yeah, but now you can draft a defenseman. I'm like, okay, but does this make them better for next year? Right. Everybody thought after this past season, they would take a step. And it's funny because I had proposed a trade on our pod a while back where I said Nemec for Eklund, because I look and say New Jersey needs some skill. San Jose obviously needs a defenseman. And then both of them got traded basically on the same day to 2 different teams. But the San Jose one, I'll be like, to me, I felt like, okay, this is one deal, but there's got to be another trade here because this, to me, puts them back because that number 9 pick, hey, there's no guarantee it's going to be a better player than Eklund. And it's going to take you a few years before he's even as good as Eklund, simply because of age.
No, it's a great point. I'm going to tell you real quick why I can't stand Mike Grier as a general manager. I'm saying this tongue in cheek because he's very good at not letting anybody know what he's doing. And I think in his young tenure as a general manager for the San Jose Sharks, he's done a really, really good job. And I've tried to get inside the mind. I'm like thinking like, what's the angle here? It may not make a ton of sense right now. And like, if we're going to go from the Ottawa standpoint, I do think this makes sense. But from the San Jose standpoint, I'm going to hold off on my judgment on it because of these picks, of the accumulation. Like the one thing I will say is that I didn't think, that's why I was always wondering with them at 2, and let's say Eklund's still back on the Sharks. I'm like, are you drafting Stenberg? Like, are you going to go him at 2? Like, you're going to have a logjam of talent here. And like, it's going to stunt the growth of some of these guys. So I was thinking to myself, we've talked about it on this show in the past where I was thinking at that time, well, maybe they're going to trade 2. Maybe they can trade 2 and then they can trade back a little bit, get a rostered defenseman, and then, still have a pick within the top 10 or whatever the circumstances are. And then, so this goes down and it makes me think, all right, so if Eklund's going out, this to me shows that they're going Stenberg at 2 and they're going to go forward there. Maybe dead wrong on this because Mike liked to throw a wrench in that the other day and said, no, we're not there's no guarantees. That's you guys assuming that that's what we're doing. But he's got options. He's got I think this is currency, Greg's, for me, that 9th overall pick. There's no guarantees. You're looking at a 9th overall pick that played 4th line his entire career. So there's no guarantees of what you're going to get there at 9, but it is currency before that pick is taken. Right. So I'm very, very curious. I was intrigued leading up to, this draft with San Jose, and I'm even more so now because I think there's a bigger trick up Mike Grier's sleeve, and I think they're going to be making some sort of deal.
Well, he had a very interesting quote when he spoke to the media before the draft on Wednesday. Lots of teams do it, especially teams in the top 10, and usually they'll be like, you know what, we got nothing. We're going to say, and Grier's like, well, I've had some offers. One that's very interesting at the number 2 pick. And I'm just like, oh, Nice move, Mike, because it gets many of us intrigued, but also I can't recall hearing that. Right? He didn't give away anything. He just said, we got one that's interesting. Now, maybe it was just him having fun with the media. You never know because he doesn't say anything. But that comment just made me wonder. And then I look at the number 9 pick and I'm like, okay, are the San Jose Sharks going to make a big, bold run here? But then I'm looking and saying, well, who are the players that are available to trade? And I'm like, well, there's Jason Robertson, right? Like that was the initial name that jumped off the page right away because there's not many other. Robert Thomas is now off of the market in St. Louis. They're going to keep him, right? Him and McMichael actually played together before. So, they're like, no, he's staying here. Away we go. Now, Colton Parayko, they did try to trade him at the deadline, and maybe they'll try again. We'll see. Or he just says, no, I'm not getting traded. It's my right. Way we move on. But I am like Jason Robertson. I don't know if I would do it for the number 2 directly unless there was Robertson plus. But then if you're the Dallas Stars, who are kind of in a window now, it's great to get a Stenberg, but maybe they look and say, maybe we're not ready just yet. But in a few years with Wyatt Johnson and Stenberg, Heiskanen will still be in his prime. You got Harley, he'll still be in his prime. Maybe they consider it.
That's an interesting one. That would be something where, Jason Robertson, he's raised in California, so San Jose is at least getting back in that state. It could, I wonder that would be a very, very interesting one for me. There's just, but that's the thing here with San Jose is they've got some options to kind of throw around, like, I don't know. Like I've always just kind of felt like the number 2 overall pick was certainly, they basically won the lottery, which we would say, like, not the draft lottery, but they got a really high pick here when you kind of felt like those days of those high picks have kind of passed them where they wouldn't be as high as that. So they kind of it fell into their lap and what are they going to do with that? It didn't necessarily mean they would treat it as normal because they're a team that I think wants to take another big step, and they took a huge step last season. So that's very interesting to me. Again, that is the team I'm watching around the draft. The other one that kind of kicks back too is like, how many teams have multiple first-round picks? And we were talking about Jason Robertson. Like St. Louis Blues have 4 first-round picks. Like, are we getting in offer sheet territory where teams are going to be prepping to maybe offer sheet like a Jason Robertson and trying to sit here and have some of the assets in play to put that type of package together? This is a wild time right now in the NHL. It's pretty exciting, but there's not too many times that we have these high-end players that are quote unquote available.
Yes, and clearly we've seen that the teams are willing to do it. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the recent history of number 2 overall picks, I'm just going to go through like the last decade. So you had Michael Misa last year in 25. Then you had Lefshinov. Leo Carlsson in Anaheim looks like a really good player. Simone Nemec just got traded. Matty Beniers, Quentin Byfield, Capo Caco, Andrei Svechnikov, Nolan Patrick, who had to retire early, Patrick Laine. Like the number 2 overall pick here in the last decade, like you got to go back to Jack Eichel to get a real superstar. Now, Leo Carlsson, I think, is trending to be that guy, and it's too early on Misa yet, and even Lefshinov. But then you had that stretch of Eichel, Barkov, Sam Reinhart from 15, 14, 13. But then you go Ryan Murray. Obviously, if you go back to the days of Hedman and Doughty, it was a really good run. But lately, for whatever reason, the number 2 pick since 2016 has not been like dominant. I think Carlson will change that, and Misa might. But Simone Nemec just got traded. Who knows how good he'll be? We'll see. Matty Beniers, okay player. Quentin Byfield, good player, but not a superstar by any stretch. Kako, same thing. Svechnikov, solid player, not a superstar. Nolan Patrick, injuries. Patrick Laine, great start to his career, has slowed down, injuries, foot speed, whatever. So if you're the Sharks, and every draft is different, I understand that. But I always caution people who just want to anoint draft picks as locks. Oh, you're number 2. Yeah. You're going to be a superstar. You're number 4. You're going to be a superstar. It's not how it works.
No, and it's just, I just think that the it's funny because the picks, the picks before we put a face on the picks, it's like buying a new car. You know, you're always told when you buy a new car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates quickly. It's kind of the same thing with these picks. Number 2 overall pick sounds amazing. It sounds great and it sounds fantastic. And you can think of all the great things you want to do with this number 2 overall pick. But then once a name's put on it, that's where you start nitpicking the game and start looking at the weaknesses. And then it's about developing that player. And it's a lot of other things that come into play here. So in some aspects, it's almost worth more now. And I'm not saying, listen, number 2 overall pick is most likely going to be Stenberg. And from all accounts, he might be awesome. An incredible career that he might have in the National Hockey League. Looks like he's NHL ready now. So I'm not trying to say anything, but today you could argue that number 2 pick has more value than even when that pick is made. So in order to go and trade, there's something there. You know what I mean? So that's the big thing here. Even when you're talking 9th overall, and you can sit there, it's a top 10 pick. Everybody wants to try to trade up and find these possibilities. After the draft, it feels a little bit different. It's like driving around your car for a week and then trying to go resell it. It's just not the same. So, I don't know. It'll be fascinating what happens here. But you mentioned it before. This is like one of the first times we ever see trades being made in the top 10 with the picks in a while. There's not a ton of that, especially in the top 5. But just hearing the whispers on it, it doesn't happen that frequently, and we're hearing about it quite a bit.
Yes. So there's always a few players that we think are locks that will be good. And then there's, you look back at Cale Makar's draft. He should have been the number 1 overall pick, but he wasn't, right? Colorado, funny enough, Colorado dropped that year. That was their year. They were terrible. And they dropped 3 spots. Because if they're picking 1, 2, or 3, I'm not sold they'd take Makar. Definitely if they were picking number 1, I don't think they would have. And so sometimes, luck can help you in different ways. It is definitely far from an exact science. And I love the passion that people have about the draft. I've learned to take a cautious approach because, unless you're a scout who's watching it all the time, and even then, scouts will do it all the time, and they'll admit, man, you're drafting 17, sometimes 18-year-olds. It's really hard to project what they're going to be in 5 years, right? Quality of competition. Yeah. You can use that, everything. Have they reached their peak? Is this the best they'll be? It's not automatic that every player keeps improving and improving, because when you get to the pros, Rupp, you would know, now you're the best of the best. And suddenly you've been playing against guys 2, 3 years, maybe 4 years older than you if you're a 16-year-old and junior and you're playing against some 20s. You get to the NHL, and now suddenly you're playing against guys 5, 10, 15 years older than you who have boatloads of experience mentally, physically, everything. And now you're expected to come in and compete right away. And it is damn hard.
And it doesn't just fall on the player. You are a product of the environment you're around and in. The team has to develop you, put you in the right situations. That's a huge part of this, because when these guys get drafted, there's no one's going to get drafted top 10 that you're going to say how the hell, this isn't just rolling the dice. It is rolling the dice in a lot of ways, but there's a reason why you're thought of as going in the top 10. Now, to execute that, you've got to have X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C all in place. So, even look at the way that it's been well documented with the Rangers. With you mentioned Kakko, you got Capo Kakko, you got Alexis Lafreniere, those things. Their development didn't come along, and you could say, well, maybe they weren't as good as we touted them to be, but it's also the environment they're in. That's what makes some of these players still intriguing to me. But there's so much to it. There's so much to it. And then you sit there and look at some of these players some of these teams that don't really seem like they care about the draft, and they're pretty successful, right? Just getting the NHL ready players. They trade away their picks. Vegas is probably the poster child of that. You go in recent years, probably got to throw the Panthers in there. There's a number of teams that have quite a bit of success with not running that, because they know that there's a lot of risk involved with the draft.
Yeah, well, you look at the Rangers, or that stretch from 17 to 20. They took Lias Andersson 7th overall. Philip Hedl, injuries have really kind of slid him down. He was a first rounder as well, 21st. Then in 2018, they took Kravtsov. He played 64 games, hasn't done anything. Then they took Capo Caco, second overall. It's been good, but lots of guys in this draft class have passed him. Lafreniere, Braden Schneider were both first rounders in 2020. And then they had Brennan Othman in 2021. Now he was 16, so it's not like it's a guarantee, but you look at those picks and, Lafreniere has turned into a good player, not a great player by any stretch of the imagination. Like Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson. If I'm just looking at top 10 guys, that those two would clearly be better. You throw Seth Jarvis, Anton Lundell a little bit later in that first round. Obviously, it panned out. And so sometimes it's like, what are the Rangers doing there? That's a 5-year span. And they didn't really hit big on any of those guys. So you do have to question their scouting department because that's what their job is, right? Now, did they develop some of those guys? I argued Lafreniere, Capo Caco, what are you doing in the NHL? He was barely playing. You ruined their confidence. I still think organizations are too arrogant in believing that they know what's better. They don't even, you got to have tough love here, Rupper. If you can't handle it at 19 or 18, geez, it's just not going to be good. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I can give you the list of guys. Leon Draisaitl is been a top 5, top 3 player in the league for years. He didn't play in the NHL as a teenager. He tried and he wasn't good enough. They sent him back to junior. Then he came in a year later, right? And he was much better. And he really didn't burst till 21 or 22. Historically, the sweetest players are the same thing. Yet here there are teams continue it every freaking year to pound this square peg into a round hole and think, but Connor McDavid did it and Sidney Crosby did it. And, there's a few exceptions who are teenagers who do it. And these teams still think that, their guy is going to be the next exception. And in 90% of the cases, they're wrong.
The problem here, too, that it all kind of comes back to this for me is I think there's a lot of GMs in the league that they operate on job security more than what's best for the player and the organization long term. And you could argue maybe that's the right path for them because the lifespan might not be long enough to see some of these things through. But, you're sitting there and it's like you draft the player here and you're trying to force it in there. And here's the thing. This will stand true every draft that's ever happened. If you are relying upon this year's draft to spark your team in the incoming season, you're out of your mind. You've done a bad job. And unless you've tanked to get in this position, now you're going to start building to go back. But like to the point where, if a player's forced to come in here because our team needs him, that's an improper way of doing it with these young players. Like you got to do what's best for them. That's why I think even back in the day, and it's never going to go back to that because that was an older league then. It's a younger league now, maybe where some of these younger players have a better chance at thriving. But think back to like the Devils and the Red Wings and all the teams that brought the players up through, and you knew you were spending a minimum of time of whatever in the American Hockey League. So you mentioned Leon. I remember vaguely when Leon wasn't he lit up. Didn't Leon light up the American League there? That like right at the end, it wasn't he just like I don't recall what happened. Did he not?
No, he only actually was. So Leon, he played 37 games. Now he was a late birthday, right? So his first year, then he came in and he went back to junior after 37 games in the NHL. I think he had like 2 goals, 9 points. He wasn't ready. So he went back to junior, got traded from Prince Albert to Kelowna, and they went on all the way to the Memorial Cup. Then the next year, he started in the American League and played 6 games. And I think he actually only had 2 points in the 6 games. I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't very much. Then he got called up and you know what? He took over. And I think he ended up with like 50 points in 70 games.
So was that he only played 6 in the American League?
Yeah.
All right. So maybe I got it confused. I remember there was a stretch here where maybe it was even just in Edmonton where he started putting it together and you started seeing him kind of racking up some points. It's a process.
Yeah. No, when he got called up, he came up right away and he produced points. I think he had 8 points or something in his first 10, 11 games in the NHL. Like he was like, okay, I'm ready. And I remember talking to Leon and at first I was like, okay, when people say stuff, but he was like, no, I needed to get stronger because he was a big man who was heavy, but he felt like I wasn't strong enough to carry my weight, to use it effectively. So after playing that year in Edmonton, and he is a dogged worker, most of the best players are, he basically said he did leg day rupper like every day. And at first I was kind of like, wow, come on, can't do leg day every day. But he might have done it. I probably should revisit that. But I remember him saying that, yeah, I just really worked on deadlifts and squats and really I needed to get my legs stronger. So that's what I did. And it worked because a lot of people were worried about, oh, can Leon Draisaitl skate at the NHL level? That was the question about him. And he's a big guy who Leon Draisaitl skates better than I think people think. But he's a great example that you don't need to be the absolute burner to dominate. Right?
Yeah.
He's fast when he needs to be fast. He slows the game. It's kind of like Kucherov. Like you look at Kucherov and Draisaitl and you compare him to McDavid and McKinnon. They're all incredibly successful, but McKinnon and McDavid are like full on speed, right? One's power speed, one's fast speed. And then Draisaitl and Kucherov are a little bit more, great passing, think the game, slow it down. Draisaitl is obviously a little bit bigger. Kucherov's probably underappreciated still, just at how smart he is and the plays he makes and how he reads the ice. But he's fast, but he doesn't just attack you with speed, right? Like it shows you there's different ways. And sometimes I get a little tired hearing about speed, everybody. I'm like, what? Like I know lots of guys who can skate super fast and accomplish nothing.
Do you remember Rico Fata?
Oh, yeah, buddy. 6th overall pick. That guy could fly. That's when the Flames had a run of 6th overall picks that weren't good.
I remember playing against him in the OHL, and he was a hell of a player, man. Really, really good player. And he was so fast. And I don't want to say, like, I'm not going to sit here and say Rico didn't have good hands. He had good hands, but his foot speed was so elite, his hands couldn't keep up. And this is no word of a lie. I remember playing against him. He was in London, and he would draw himself offside all the time. He'd get the puck at his defensive blue line. If there's like a turnover, the puck goes out to the point, bobbles on the defenseman. Rico's gone, and he's skating. And I can't even show you while we're on camera here, but he's like pushing. Like just picture one hand pushing the puck ahead of you, like we always see. He's pushing it ahead of him, and his feet would get so fast that his stick would start out from ahead of him. Then it would be like at the 45-degree angle. Then it would be like sideways next to him, and they'd be dragging it from behind him. From blue line to blue line, his foot speed would go so fast that the puck, and he'd lose it, and he'd go offside. And it's like, this is like too much. Like, so the point is, speed isn't just everything. You've got to be able to put all the things together there. And sometimes it's about slowing it down. You mentioned Kucherov, and Draisaitl's good at that. I think the best guy that I've ever seen do it, and this doesn't mean he can't skate, Patty Kane plays at in his prime, different pace, man, different speed. You have to create gaps in the defense. And sometimes that's by speed, blowing by him, or making someone back off because Connor McDavid's speed, or sometimes it's coming in and slowing it down. Now there's a bad gap. The D has to overreact and charge forward and create some discrepancies there. But no, it's fascinating, and it's stuff that it's not a cookie cutter recipe for what succeeds in the NHL. I think Leon's a perfect example of that because he could do a little bit of everything. But it was funny just going back and just going off a player that is one of the top guys in the game. He had to put the work in. He had to grind. He had to go through a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So that's kind of, I guess, our point here is that there's no locks for the NHL draft.
No. Now you mentioned Patrick Kane. The one time he was fast was, remember when I felt in just the offensive zone, there was a stretch where he was maybe the most dangerous player in the league, where he'd come in and all of a sudden, Rupper, he'd have the puck at the hash marks, and then he'd circle back up across the blue line. And then he was just like stalking everybody. And you'd see him, you'd be like, oh my God, because he could stick handle so well. Like he was one of those rare freaks who can stick handle as fast as when he skates without the puck. And that's really hard to do. Most of us slow down. And I used to remember him circling back, and now he's like, oh, I got time and vision. And he would just dance guys. And you'd be like, oh my God. He was, for a stretch there, he was my favorite player in the league to watch because
what's funny? You know what's funny with him too? Have you, honest question, and you could say, yes, you've seen it. Have you ever seen him get hit hard? Ever? Do you recall him ever getting hit?
Yeah. No.
So that's kind of my point here is like, the inventory that guys like that and that size that they take, we know the offensive inventory they're going to take on their team, but he's taking inventory on the other team too. I mean, it's very easy to say I played against Patty Kane, and it's like when I got out there with shifts with him, I'm like, I'm going to finish my hit on him every time I can. I'm more than double his size. And hold on a second. Like, there's times in my career when I was in the younger days, and it wasn't that Patty Kane was a faster skater. I can catch Patty Kane, but he knew I was coming, and he thought the game at such an elite level beyond me. He knew the little subtleties. He could juke me out, and he could do these types of things. He turns his back to me, and I'm thinking when he's coming out of his turn, I got him, bang, right here. Now comes out, gives you a little shoulder fake, goes the other way. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's special stuff there. So not all, smaller players. You see some smaller players take some hits. Like, that was the one thing with Patty Kane that always got me. I don't recall him ever getting hit very hard. I'm sure he did. If you asked him, he probably has his rap sheet of times he's gotten the licks in on him pretty good. But that was something I thought that was super impressive with him.
Yeah, well, he's a free agent, Rupper. And at his age still, I wonder where he goes and which teams he's looking for. Because I don't know, I would guess maybe he's tired of not being in the playoffs with Detroit and then Chicago for a long time. He might want another run at the playoffs. Now, speaking of the playoffs, one team that has clearly this week improved their team the most for right next season is the Washington Capitals. I don't think anybody can debate that. They got Jordan Kyrou and they got Alex Tuch. We can debate about Alex Tuch and how that contract's going to age in the final years, and that's a valid question, right? He'll be one of the last guys on an 8-year deal. There's not going to be many more. All right, we got only until September 15th until guys can sign 8 years. But you look at Kyrou, they give up McMichael and the 16th and a prospect, and then you get Tuch for a third. You look at the Caps, Rupper, they're clearly saying we got to get back into the playoffs. And honestly, when I look at their division, other than Carolina, I'm like, why not? Like right now, today, after these deals, is Washington suddenly the second best team in their division?
I mean, they got to be in contention for that. Yeah. It's a division that we talked about on here quite a bit. I thought was one of the more non-spoken about. People were going to say, look at all these teams in the Metro were in the mix. I don't think the Metro was good at all this past season, at all. And people are going to pick on the Pacific. And when Connor McDavid kind of lobbed out there the pillow fight division, people are going to run with that. The Metro was worse, in my opinion, than the Pacific. There was a lot of teams that were in contention because nobody was grabbing a hold of it. And quite frankly, there was teams that fell out in the Atlantic that made things available across the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, it's a strikeable division here. I think Carolina is by far the best team in that division, has been like that for a number of years, is probably still there. The other team that I'd probably put right there with the Washington Capitals is New Jersey. Should be able to get back to being an elite team in that division. But yeah, the Washington Capitals got to be right there. I mean, they just make these moves over the last number of years that just keeps things kind of moving. Like I don't know what to think about their team sometimes, but then you get them on paper. They don't make the playoffs every single year, but they change things up. They don't just run it back. Like, look at some of their forwards right now. Look at some of their top 6 forwards. You got Alex Tuch. You got the Protas brothers. You got Tom Wilson. These are massive human beings. Like, they are a big, big team up front. So, it'll be very interesting to see what they do. But they went swinging, and they were swinging out of their boots right there, and they struck pretty good. Now, what does this mean for Ovi? I don't know. I think probably whatever Ovi wants it to mean for him. But the Washington Capitals should be definitely, in my opinion, probably a top 3 team in the Metro this upcoming season.
Well, so they got Tuch and they got Kyrou. Then, now they lose McMichael, but they got Ryan Leonard, who in his second year is probably going to be even better. And don't sleep on their second round pick from that year in 2023, Andrew Cristal, who played in the WHL. He was a rookie last year in the American League, Rupper, put up 60 points. You know how hard it is to put up 60 points as a rookie in the American League as a 20-year-old? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I like that. I've liked him since his days in the WHL. He's played for Kelowna, and then, of course, he finished his career with Spokane. But I've really liked their drafting. But you mentioned like the Protas brothers, and Alexei is just massive. And then you got Ilya, but they are big and they're heavy. Now, I think in Washington, my question is, what about your blue line? And that to me is the area of concern. How are they going to improve their blue line? Because they've clearly improved their front line, no question, with Kyrou. I think Kyrou is going to go in there, and That's going to be a good fit for him.
Yeah.
If I'm Ovi, I scored 32 goals last year. Like, I know that he looks like he's slower. I don't care. He still scored 32 goals, right? I haven't even looked what his top end speed was at NHL Edge, but I'm going to guess it wasn't that quick. The bottom 50%.
Don't look.
Sure.
Don't look.
And but he can still score, right? Like, he's limited in what he can do moving forward, yes, but I'm sure he wants to go out with at least a chance at the playoffs. And Washington, to me, I've liked what they've done. They've been big. You mentioned the Devils, and this obviously he asked for the trade, so Nemec gets traded. They get 2 first rounders. Now they're most likely to be later first rounders, unless Colorado and Vegas shock us and fall out of it here in the next 2 years. But I look at that trade for Calgary, and I quite like it. You don't give up your first rounders because you're still a team that's trying to, they're a few years away, but you get a good defenseman. And, Siplikov's, he's a depth forward. He's an NHL forward for the most part for the next few years anyway. I quite like that trade for them. If I'm the Devils now, Sonny Meta, he's got 2 extra first rounders. What's he going to do? Because the Devils, so they've lost Nemec. They also have the injury to Dillon, so he might not be ready to start the season. Now they've got a lot of depth. They got Hamilton. They still got Hughes, Siegenthaler. They got the blue line there. But what do you think of the Devils? Like, how do they improve here this offseason?
So I don't think you do much with their D core. I mean, you can always argue that I'd like to have maybe another puck moving defenseman on their D core, but Simone Nemec, there just wasn't enough room, I think, on this roster to have like a Luke Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, and a Simone Nemec, just because of what their strengths are and the way they need to play. I don't know if you can have 3 guys like that, and they're different in each of their own. But I'm okay with their back end, maybe just a little more foot speed from a depth guy you could bring in, maybe a 5'6" type defenseman or someone that even could be an extra at times and come in. So that would be the one thing for me. As far as up front, I still feel like they need a finisher. They need someone that, Timo Meier hasn't been consistently finishing for them. Jesper Bratt has not either. So I feel like they need more of like a shooter. And so we've heard some names out there. I mean, they've got a few pieces they could probably move around here, and now acquiring those picks from Calgary. It's all going to be about what Sonny Meta does with that. Now, I think that I don't know. I keep coming back to the Vancouver Canucks because I think that they're a team that has been very open about pretty much open for business on everybody. And they kind of want to just do this complete tear down rebuild from the studs up. And so what does that mean for like a Brock Besser? What does that mean for like a Jake DeBrusk? Like, there's players who I don't think those would be like the perfect fits for New Jersey, but if you can get the right situation, could the juice be worth the squeeze as far as having maybe like a Brock Besser? Like, Brock Besser is one there's times like he can get hot and he can score goals. We know that, but then he could disappear for stretches at the same time. But there's going to have to be some risk. You're not going to be able to go get an absolute. Those guys aren't available. You've got to take some chance here. So I'm very curious. So I guess I probably a scoring winger would be number one priority. And that's assuming that Jacob Markstrom's going to be better. That was a huge problem for this team, is that Jacob Markstrom's game has not been where it needs to be. And if he can play to the level he can play at, or just be good, this team should be an elite team, I think, in the Metro.
Markstrom is a great example of goalie who, you look at his years, man, 1 year great, next year down, next year great, next year down. It kind of illustrates the challenge of that position for lots of players. Like, when he's on, people are like, man, this guy's really good. And then the next year, you're like, is this guy even a top 20 goalie in the league? It's kind of crazy. Like you don't really see that amongst forwards, right? Like if you become a top 10 scorer, usually, like, look at the top 10 scorers in the NHL, man, for the last decade. It's pretty much a lot of the same guys, especially the top 5, right? Pasternak, Kucherov, Draisaitl, McDavid, McKinnon. You're like, okay. And then you go from there. But goalies, it's much different for sure. And speaking of goalies, there has been a lot of whispers around Connor Hellebuyck, Rupper. Do you think Connor Hellebuyck gets moved here in the next week?
I do. I think he does get moved. I don't know if it's next week. I think it's going to happen sooner than later. I don't think that those, I guess, whatever you want to call it. When did he come out with those comments? Was that locker clean out? Was that
right up?
Yeah. This is players. We're trained in this department, especially high end guys like Connor Hellebuyck. You don't let anything out. You don't let certain things kind of seep out into the atmosphere of the hockey world without knowing exactly what you're doing. So I think that's what that was. And it's almost one of those things too, because of who he is, the position he plays, and what he means to that franchise. There's, in my opinion, is almost like no turning back. Like I just don't really see him being able to go into Winnipeg, and it's just, maybe it's not that bad right now, but it could be trending in that direction. So I do. I think that he potentially gets moved here very soon. Now, some of the teams are here. Like, I have no idea. Like the floor, I wish we talk about like confidence in yourself as individuals and whatever. Like the Florida Panthers getting out there and being like, how the hell are you going to get Connor Hellebuyck? Can we look at the roster and like, what do you have the no assets, the cap space, like whatever the situation is. But I don't, these guys find a way. Like that's what makes them Vegas Golden Knights, the Dallas Stars, the Colorado Avalanche. We don't think there's a path for these guys to get better, and they do. That's what makes them great in their management. So we're hearing that name. I don't know how that works, but if it does, look out for the Florida Panthers. But at the end of the day, there's a bunch of teams that could use Connor Hellebuyck's services. The Devils would be another one right there as well. So I just, for whatever reason, I'm leaning towards him not being on the Winnipeg Jets to start this season.
Okay. All right. We'll get to, there are a few teams we're going to get to after Pat Puff. We're going to talk Edmonton. We're going to talk the St. Louis Blues because they got 4 first rounders. Now, not in the top 10, but they got 11, 15, 16, 29. They've already traded Kyrou. What other moves can they make? So we'll get to St. Louis. We're going to talk about Ottawa. And I have one question for you about Florida and that Tkachuk trade. But first, let's bring in Pat Puff for another edition of Fill in the Blank.
Thank you. A Thursday edition, so we get to do that today. Today is Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365. The worst thing about hockey season, at some point every year, it ends. The good news is that Bet365 has plenty of games, just none that require you to lace up your skates. At Bet365 Casino, you can choose between hundreds of slots, live tables, and your favorite games, or maybe your second favorite game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. First question I have for you guys. There's a lot of really good D-men out there on the market. Nurse, John Carlson, Anderson, Morgan Riley, Lyubushkin, Dougie Hamilton. And of course, they all kind of play different roles on a team, whether that's shutdown or power play. But is there a defenseman on free agency or the trade market that you think any team would be happy with that could just slot in, no problem, make your team better? Like who's on the top of your list, Greg's?
Well, I'm intrigued by the meeting that's going to come between Columbus and Zach Werenski. He obviously would skyrocket to the top of the list. And if that's the case here, Columbus really hasn't had a bunch of success for a long time. And, Werenski, you get that feeling of winning at the Olympics. And I'm sure now that changes his mindset a little bit here. Are we entering a phase of the NHL and trying to build super teams? Maybe. It lasted for a brief time in the NBA and ultimately didn't end up working as well for most of them as people thought. But it would have to be Zach Werenski, I think, no question. But I'm going to say guys who we know 100% are available, John Carlson. I think John Carlson really can make a difference for your team in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I not to jump on what you just said, but John Carlson's the one I think that can fit in and help really any team, because I would have to assume it seems like he's willing to maybe not take any role, but to go in there and just be complimentary. And what do you need? Like there's teams like we talked the Flyers. I think it would be awesome for John Carlson to go in there. Hey, we need you to get our power play going. You're going to be power play one. We're going to find a way. I mean, Carlson's a Jersey kid, so it's kind of coming home in some regards. But there's a bunch of teams I think John Carlson would be a good fit, because what we saw is we know how old he is as far as his hockey age, but he looked really good in Anaheim. Like he was fantastic for that hockey club. So that's why I think when you add a guy like that and all of his experiences, what do you want him to do? Do you have some injuries up front? Do you need him to play a top pair? Like, honestly, I think he could do that for stretches. You need him to play second pair. You need him to play third pair. He can do that, whatever his appetite is. So John Carlson is kind of that universal defenseman that I think all teams can probably use.
Really quick, what percentage would you put on Werenski getting moved this year, Greg's?
Well, that's a good question, man. Like, why are you waiting until after the draft for the meeting? So that's a little odd to me. That tells me that maybe it's not as imminent, but I could be totally wrong. I think if a player wants to go, he's going to want to go. So the timing of it, and they're going to wait and meet till after the draft. I'm kind of like, all right, but. Now, hey, if Werenski suddenly is available, but is he available to only a small list of teams like that? Eventually, we'll have a discussion about that. You can ask for a trade all you want. If you only give 3 teams, I'm not giving away Zach Werenski if I'm the Columbus Blue Jackets, only because he wants to go to a select market. I'd be like, well, if that select market wants to give me good value, if not, ain't happening.
Yeah, we could argue that Zach Werenski should have gotten more love in the Hart Trophy. Like, that's how important he is for that hockey club. And this is like, I'll go back to what I said with Connor Hellebuyck. The fact that this even comes out is very calculated and part of that process to start easing and getting those conversations going. Now, this is me completely reading between the lines, but you just kind of said it there, Greg's, where I think the fact that this even came out and you started hearing those things where we're going to have to discuss it, I think is the players starting to move and get this thing rolling in that direction. And I think the team saying like, yep, we're going to talk about it after the draft is them being like, we're not doing anything right now. So we'll have those conversations, but this is, you are a Columbus Blue Jacket. So I could totally see him playing this season in Columbus. They should feel no need to be in a rush to do something here because this is a franchise guy that is literally everything to this team. So, we'll see how they kind of manage it. So as far as a percentage, I think it's pretty low right now. I'd say less than 20% chance that probably even lower than that. Let's say 15% or less of a chance that Zach Werenski gets moved here.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Second question I have for you guys is someone we talked about off air, and it really got me thinking. Matt Zuccarello, one of my favorite players to watch in the NHL, and a name that I think of when I think of the Minnesota Wild. So to hear his name kind of out there, no current contract, and I'm just curious what percentage you would put on Zuccarello maybe finding a new home this year, because I think he's a big piece for the Wild and would be a big piece for anyone this season.
Wow, he's 38 years of age, man. I'm going to say I think it's 100% chance he finds a new home.
Wow. 100%. Ooh, I'm kind of stuck on this one. So I play with Zuki in New York. Literally one of the best guys you'll ever be around. Just as far as the locker room, keeping it light. He's such a smart player, so good at passing the puck. He's just an all-around team guy that you want to have around. So Minnesota knows that. With Marcus Johansson signing in Sweden, not being back, I still think there's a need for. I still wonder what they're going to do at the center ice position, because here's the thing: if they're able to land like a Dylan Larkin, maybe that just all of a sudden is a situation where you're like, all right, well, we've got enough offense here. We've got our number one center. I know Zook doesn't play center, but hang with me a second. So like this gets us in a different realm of where we want to be. But if they don't do that, they've got to kind of be this offensive team that drives from the wings, from special teams, the power play. That's where Zuki's going to add a lot of value, because he's still really good on that power play. And when they were without him, remember, in the playoffs for a few games, their power play couldn't do anything. He comes back, power play's back up and running. So, Matt Zuccarello, don't care about his age. He'd be a guy that I think would be super valuable for the Minnesota Wild. So I think that he ends up being there. So I don't know what percentage to put on it. I feel pretty strongly that, north of 50% that he'll be back in Minnesota. If not, I'm the New York Rangers. I'm calling because I want to change the vibes in our room, have a guy that's been around a long time and that's loved universally. Let's get some guys in there. There's a lot of value, I think, in Matt Zuccarello and some other places. I just don't know where he wants to go.
Yeah, that's fair. His numbers haven't really dropped off too much. I mean,
No.
in 24, 25, 69 games, 54 points, and then 54 points last year in 10 less games. So, yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I didn't realize he was 38. I had 35 in my head, but yeah, that's crazy. So, something to keep an eye on in the next couple of days for sure. And last question I have for you guys, looking at Matt Larkin's trade board here. Normally, I try and keep it positive, but is there a name on this board that if you were an NHL GM, you're staying absolutely away from, Greg's?
Ooh, geez. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, yes, Barry Kotkaniemi. That would be the obvious one, I think. Like you look at, there's lots of names on that board, but like the top names, Larkin, McTavish, Trocheck, now McCabe's interesting. He's a UFA. So I guess maybe you trade his rights, but I might be just saying I'll wait a few days to, like he's a good player, but I'm not sure he's a guy that I need to give up a draft pick for to get his rights. But yeah, Kotkaniemi would be the guy. People keep talking about how, you know what? He's going to find his game. He's going to find his game. Like he didn't even play in the playoffs for them, unfortunately. Like his game has just slowly regressed. Now he's on a really good team. So maybe he could play. Could he play minutes on a bad team? Sure. Like there's difference of being a third line center in a cup contender or a playoff team or a bottom team. That's just the truth. So he would probably be at the top of my list for guys that I would be leery of. Like Matthew Nyes might be at the top, man. Like I'm perplexed. That's the one name. I'm like, why are the Leafs considering trading Matthew Nyes here? What am I missing?
Yeah, no, that's the one that I'm like, why is he on this board as far as like, why are we hearing his name out there? I don't know, man. It's tough because I think that there's always that wonder of some of these guys, like what it would look like in a new environment, new situation. The one for me is kind of probably Dougie Hamilton. Just because I thought he actually played pretty good hockey towards the end of the season for the Devils this past year. Once he was a scratch and kind of got back in the lineup, but he's got that price tag there. That's why I almost think that he's in a somewhat of a similar situation, the way I kind of viewed Darnell Nurse in Edmonton the last number of years, where you're like, all right, this is a player, totally different players, but they're making X amount of dollars, pretty similar as far as what they're making. And to me, it's almost there's more value for the team that they're currently on than there maybe necessarily is moving on from them. So, like, how can we complement what they're not doing with other defensemen in our D-core and the way we kind of deploy them? So, I don't Dougie Hamilton, unless you're getting him at a very discounted price, that'd be one that I'd be kind of leery on.
All right, I know that was a tough one, but I'm excited for the next couple days. Obviously, lots of stuff to go on, and we're just constantly refreshing Twitter, waiting for more news to drop. So it's been fun, and that's all I have for you guys. Fill in the blank, brought to you by Bet365.
Well, there you go. So we got a few things to discuss. Let's start with the Blues. You got 4 first-rounders, Rupper. And they got 15, 16. I know a lot of people online, they're going to take the Ruck twins. I'm like, that'd be a little bit of a reach, I think, to move up at 15 or 16, but maybe later if they get another pick, you never know if teams will try to get both of them together or not. Not sold that has to happen. Ronnie and Rich, I know that the Deans did, but it's kind of hard for a team to have 2 picks pretty close to make it happen. The Blues, though, they've moved Kyrou, which has been talked about for a while. Now this story is that I think it was Jeremy Rutherford who said that Thomas is off the market now. But there's still Parayko and maybe Binnington. And like, I think Binnington might be more of a realistic ad for Florida than Hellebuyck potentially. Obviously, the acquisition cost wouldn't be as much. But how busy do you expect the Blues to be here in the next few days, considering they got 4 first-rounders? And I don't know if you're going to take 4 first-rounders in one draft class.
No, I mean, I can't imagine doing that. We've seen some crazy. We've seen 3. When did we see? When was the last time there's 4? Boston? Was that the 4 that?
No, they had 3 in a row, right? They had 3 in a row. Picks, right? 13, 14, and 15. And obviously Jake DeBrusk at 14 worked out very well. Zabaril and Zanishin 13 and 15 did not. But they had 3 in a row. And God, I'm sure Bruins fans, sorry to rip the scab off again, Bruins fans who are listening, but they probably are like, Matt Barzal, Thomas Chabot, Eriksson Ek, like Kyle Connor, all these guys went in few, like they missed out on all of them. And so it's not like you just pick one. I'm like, God, there's like 10 guys, Travis Konechny. There's other ones that they could have taken, but they didn't. That was wild to me. But so, they're split up a bit, but 11, 15, and 16 are still pretty tight together. You can get some good players there for sure, but I wonder if you start saying, well, we can't take two defensemen, even if we have the two defensemen ranked the highest. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I wonder if you end up screwing yourself because you overthink it.
Yeah. I don't know what their philosophy is. This will tell us because, this is Doug Armstrong was always, let's get back competitive right now. Like he didn't never really wanted to do any kind of, there's always the idea of doing a retool, but it was never like a tear it down. This is Alex Dean is just taking over now. And I wonder where the philosophy is. I'd assume it's somewhat similar because they worked kind of hand in hand with this transition of the team. But when I look at the roster, like they have some really good things going as far as their age appropriate players, which maybe ages out some of these other guys. Like, Robert Thomas being off the market now does make a little bit of sense because he's 26 years old. Dylan Holloway, 24. You've got Jake Neighbors, 24. Jimmy Snuggerud, 22. So I wonder if some of these, you go on the back end with Broberg, 25. Like this is really good age appropriate players that are kind of in that same realm of anywhere from 23 to 26 years old. So these 4 picks in the first round, I think would just be a level of currency to go and maybe even add an impactful player in that range, like mid-20s from another hockey club. Maybe it's even someone that needs another second chance. Wink, wink, Alexis Lafreniere. That would be something that could work really well, I think, as well. So grab someone that's kind of in that age group because I don't know. I feel pretty strongly that, and I don't think they're going to do this, but drafting those 4 picks is not probably the best use of all this. You know what I mean? And unless you have like your guy you definitely want, maybe you trade a couple of those picks away, get a mid-20 guy, maybe on the back end, make that back end a little bit younger because they have some players here like Colton Parayko was traded but wouldn't approve. Like they have some players that they tried to move that they're older that are probably not going to be a part of the puzzle moving forward. So I think it's about still trying to add those age-appropriate guys in the mid-20s.
Rupp, you asked about the last time a team had 4 first-rounders was the 1999 Islanders. I want to look up who they took. But
I know this. I know that. Can I give you the answers to these? I remember that. That was the year after I was drafted in 98. That year they had Timmy Connolly. They had Taylor Pyatt. They had Christian Kudrock. And they had Branislav Mezzi, I think, are the 4. Is that what I'm showing?
I'm going to look it up right now.
Yeah. That was the one that 4 picks. I'm pretty sure that was it.
And dude, they had 3 in the top 10.
Yeah.
Right. So they took Tim Connolly 5th. They took Taylor Pyatt 8th. They took Branislav Mezzi 10th. And then they had Kudrock was 28th. He was the last pick of the first round back then. So they had 4 and kind of like St. Louis has 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like they had 3 picks out of 6. The Islanders had 3 out of 6 from 5 to 10. And, that Tim Connolly turned out, hey, he was a pretty good player in that draft class. That wasn't, a stellar draft class. But the 1974 Canadiens had 5 and there was only 18 picks in the first round. They had 5 of them. They took Cam Connor 5th overall. Then they took Doug Risebrough 7th. They took Rick Chartraw 10th, Mario Tremblay 12th, and Gordon McTavish 15th. Now, McTavish played 11 games. Mario Tremblay turned out to be a really good pick for them. Played like 852 NHL games. Their other picks, though, they took Cam Connor, and then the next pick, Doug Hicks, played 561 games. Cam Connor played 89. Then they took Doug Risebrough, really solid player. But the pick right after him, Pierre LaRouche, 2-time 50-goal scorer, who scored 395 goals. And then they took Rick Chartraw. He played 420. Lee Fogland captained those Edmonton Order teams for a few years. He played 924 games. So, yeah, they didn't do a great job in 1974 when you look at their picks. The other team that I want to look it up because the 1998 Colorado Avalanche also had 4 picks, and I'm looking to see. So they took Tanguay 12th, then they took Martin Skula 17th. Those are 2 good picks. Robin Regeer 19th, and Scott Parker 20th. Guy was tough as nails. But Regeer, Skula, and Tanguay, those are 3 really solid players.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I forgot about that year too. So I mean, it's this the whole draft. It's always fascinating going back and looking and saying, all right, well, if you did it differently and kind of redraft it in your head, but when you've got that many picks and you use them, I don't know, like off the top, you want to hit on every single pick, especially when you're 4 first rounders. But like, I don't know what percentage like you put on it, like. What would be a successful draft? I mean, when we look at drafts over the years for teams, if you come out of a draft, I'm just throwing a number out there. If every year you come out of a draft and you have 2 players from that draft that are on your roster for like the next 8 years, that's doing an incredible job. That doesn't sound like very much. If you can have 2 players that are part of your roster for an extended period of time, no matter what that means, is it a third liner, a second liner, or is it a 5th defenseman, is it a number 1 defenseman? That's a pretty good order of business, because if you go back and start kind of looking at the way drafts are, there's no guarantee you're getting an impactful player in an entire draft, let alone, having 4 first round picks and hitting on all of them it would be very difficult to do.
Well, if you look at the history of draft picks, and I think this doesn't include like anybody drafted in the last few years, obviously, because it's too early to tell. But first round picks to play 500 plus games, just to play the game, regardless of how skill level you are or not. 41% of first rounders play 500 plus games. 68% of them will play at least 100 games. Right. So that's.
So let me throw this out there, though. First round pick. And again, coming from a guy who was a first round pick, you are given every opportunity. You should get 100 games. Like, you are getting multiple opportunities from one team. You'll get traded to another team, You're going to get forced that. So, getting to 100, it should not be that challenging, I believe.
Yeah, well, and that's fair, right? You would think so, but man, you go through the draft classes, and let's just go, because I got it still up, that 98 draft class, guys who didn't make it to 100 games. Jeff Harima played 32. Michael Henrik, Oiler fans are still sad about that. He played none. Patrick DeRoche, 11. Matthew Chouinard played 1. Eric Chouinard played 90. And the rest all played. So out of 27, there was 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're right? So that 5 out of 27. So that didn't make it, which is still higher than the average of 68%. I think that I'd like to go back. I think teams have put more emphasis on scouting nowadays. Rupper, like if I go back and I'll look at just go to the 2010 random draft class and say, okay, out of the first rounders, how many didn't play at least 100 games? Brandon Gormley, Joey Hishon, Quentin Howden, and Mark Byzantine. That was it. So, 4 out of 30. So, it's improved a bit, but it's still, now when you're going to get higher than that, like when I look at guys who, to me, like you get to that 500 threshold, a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It is something like I look at the Blues, the odds that all 4 of them, like that Colorado draft was damn good, man. Like you got Robin Regeer was a really good number 2 defenseman. Tanguay was a 1,000-game player. Skula was a top 4 defenseman. Like, that's a really good draft. And then Scotty Parker, he didn't play, but that guy, for his role, he was tough. Really
he was a
tough.
redrafted. So he was a redrafted first round pick as well. Because he was like me. He got drafted twice. And I think he's the only guy that got drafted twice in the first round. I got drafted in the first round, my first draft, and you clearly you shouldn't generally go as high as you did 2 years later because you're 20 and everyone else is 18. So I slid to a third rounder. Pretty sure Parker went first round twice, which is pretty impressive.
No, he actually went third round with the Devils in 96. And then he jumped up 2 years later as older as a first rounder.
So even better than what I said.
Yeah. But he did the opposite of you, right? Like you went first and then went down. And because that used to happen more often. Like I remember there was almost like the trade between Edmonton and Calgary when Lombardi and Jarrett Stoll, because they each drafted him. Calgary had Lombardi, Edmonton took Lombardi, Calgary took Stoll. Both of them didn't sign. They went back in the draft, and Edmonton took Stahl, and Calgary took Lombardi, and both of them went earlier than they did the first time. So it's funny to look at it. You don't see draft picks go back as often anymore. There's some, but not. It used to happen more frequently, and that's a great question as to why. Now, with the new rule changes of 4 years, Rupper, that's going to make it probably even less likely to have happen now, right? Like CHL players, it used to be you got to sign in 2 years or you go back. Not anymore, right? Like that new rule comes in, that probably helps. I think you'll see it's going to be a little bit. Teams will take flyers now more so on guys a little bit later because they're like, wow, this guy's a 6th rounder. Well, geez, we got a few years to let him develop. We don't have to rush him, and I think it'll save some players. They'll go to college, do whatever. And that leads me to one other question about, do you think, we talked about this earlier in the draft or in the show about teams rushing guys. The fact that there is the nil money in NCAA and now you can go major, junior and play in the NCAA later, Rupper. Do you think some players will look and say, man, I could get, they're not all going to get McKenna money, I understand it. But the league minimum is the league minimum in the American League, right? And so would some guy look and say, man, I might stay another year at NCAA because I can make more than $70,000 a year. I wonder how much, that comes into play. Maybe they hold off on signing because of it. And that in a way might help some of these teams not rushing guys. Because I've seen a ton of guys at 20 come out of junior, have to go to a AHL, and they get their teeth kicked in, Rupper. And these guys are 1st round picks, 2nd round picks. And 3 years later, they're not barely in the AHL. Like it happens way more than we think, especially for 2nd and 3rd round picks.
Yeah. So like if that's part of the equation is, hey, we want to take our time with this kid, but we also understand that he wants to sign and be quote unquote professional. This kind of still allows him to do that with this NIL and going to college that route. So if that's the intention, then fine. If it's a business decision made by the player and his representative or his, what are they called now? Whatever, his advisor. That seems foolish to me. Like I always thought, if you have a chance, we all dream of playing in the National Hockey League. Like I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, I can make X amount of dollars at Penn State, so I'm going to go do that instead. That seems kind of a loser mentality for me as far as what you're trying to be as a hockey player. But yeah, I think it's a great angle to look at it where this maybe hopefully allows teams to communicate with the player and representative like, hey, here's the deal. Like we want you to take a little bit longer, but you're going to make money here, go play collegiate. And we'll kind of revisit this and take our time. So at the end of the day, you want to build a long career for these players, and the players want to build a long career. And I think handling it the right way and taking your time is the best route to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Quickly before we wrap up, Rupper, you look at Connor McDavid in an article with Mark Spector talked about how, we got to do something different. We need a harder coach. Babcock's going to coach me and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard and hold the harder guys more accountable. That's what we need to win. Now, it's interesting because Edmonton went to Game 7 of the Cup final in 24, lost 2-1. Then they went to Game 6 in 25. Last year, obviously, was down year. Then they had all their guys hurt in the first round. What do you mean? He thinks like it's 1% different. I understand to think, we need a harder ass coach. But you be careful what you wish for would be my first thing to say here. And then the second one is, where do you come out on him saying that? I have no problem if he says it, if he believes it, but do you think it's true? Like, do you think that's what cost him not to win was not having a hard ass coach?
No, I don't think so. I mean, listen, Connor would know way more than me, you, everybody else, like in what the team needs. Now, do they need this? I don't think he would say that if they didn't need it. Now, in the grand scheme of what we look at, if we kind of zoom out a little bit on the Edmonton Oilers, I'd like to see some better decision-making as far as personnel, at certain positions that are meaningful that if they kind of drop the ball on. And, that's not for Connor to come out publicly and say, and he's too, I think, classy to do that, and it's the right move to do. So, but I think my initial reaction is like, no, man, I think this team missed the boat on some bad decision making from the front office. Like that's me. Now, do they need to get pushed harder? Like if he said it, then yeah, I think that's the truth. I think my only concern in this process is going off of what the stories we've heard, and I'm not going to sit here and say Mike Babcock is not going to work. It could work. And it could be something that is what they need right now. But the only thing I will say from listening over the years of people talk about him and having conversations about how he was, and I remember having, I played with guys who played for him, dating all the way back to the Anaheim days. And some of the horror stories you'd hear, it's like, it's not the worst things in the world. Like, you're like, I can't believe, it's just not the right way, I feel like, to manage depth players. And that's where I want to go with here. We've heard it kind of said where he doesn't go after the big name guys. Now, maybe Connor and Leon want to be challenged. Maybe he will challenge them, but he goes after the guys who don't necessarily have the voice inside the room. Last time I checked, those are the guys you need in the playoffs too. And you've got to have them being a part of it as well. So I think as long as Connor and Leon want to invite this in, this is what we need. And we've kind of signed off and approved on the Zach Hyman. I'll throw in there as well. I also think just be very cognizant of how these depth players are being treated in this process, because at the end of the day, we need everybody pulling. And, even just losing a little bit of confidence, not every player needs to be treated the same way. There's certain things that it needs that players have. That's just the name of the game now. That's my only concern here is it going to, are some players going to their game fall off because they can't handle a coach like this? Maybe that tells you that's not the right type of player. But that's the league now. Like, not every player you can treat with the hammer. So that would be my biggest concern, because he's not going to go publicly after Connor. He's not going to go publicly after Leon. He's going to go publicly after the guys who are your third line, your fourth line, your fifth defenseman. That's where my concern is.
And even privately, because you hear the stories from lots of players, it was the private stuff that was the big issue. So, and then I look and say, man, do I want my superstar players, part of their job now is to have to ensure that their coach, isn't in the back room berating guys and, dehumanizing them. So there's a risk there. No question about it. Now, I've said all along, I think Edmonton's still a good team regardless of their coach, and I expect them to have a good start. I'll be curious to see what happens with Darnell Nurse if they get him moved. McDavid mentioned their leadership core, didn't mention him. Nurse, I think it's inevitable he gets traded, but right now he's got a pretty short list of teams, so might make it a little bit harder. We'll see. What happens here in the next 48 hours probably changes it. Some teams get it. Then we get to free agency, and maybe they don't get the guy they want, and now they got to circle back to a different option. So the next week, Rupper, when we talk next on Friday, July 3rd, there should be a lot of activity between now and then, from trades, draft picks, to free agent signings. It's going to be a wild week. I hope everybody enjoys it. Another rip-roaring edition of The Rundown, brought to you by Bet365. Remember, on free agency day, we have wall-to-wall coverage of Daily Faceoff, so you won't want to miss it. Your place to be locked in all day long, the free agent frenzy, and catch it live starting at noon Eastern at dailyfaceoff.com. Have yourselves an awesome weekend. Enjoy the draft and, of course, free agency with Daily Faceoff.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.